In doing the job that I do and that I get to do every single day, I know that this is a passion because I would do this every day for free. I want people to know about the city of Tulsa and the stories.
Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast providing career and creative inspiration to help you build a purpose-filled life. If you're interested in tapping into your creative potential, pursuing a career with passion, and building on your biggest and best resource, yourself, please join me on this path. I'm your host, Nancy Moore, and I want you to know that I'm on this journey with you. So let's get started. In this episode, you're going to hear from Kelly Gibson, who owns Tours of Tulsa, and you'll hear her deep love of making Tulsa come to life through her storytelling and where that storytelling even came from. But you'll also learn more about her background and how she grew up living on a summer camp year-round, and also later how she negotiated with her full-time employer to have a side hustle giving tours, and even eventually leaving accounting to pursue something that she was much more passionate about and purchasing Tours of Tulsa so she could continue sharing the rich history of Tulsa. Kelly, I am so happy to be talking with you today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nancy. It's an honor to be here.
Good. Well, I had the opportunity to go on a tour, Tours of Tulsa, tour with you, and it was phenomenal. And so after that, I had gotten your card, I left that, and I thought, I have got to circle back and visit with her because you have a great story. You just are very interesting. And so I'm wanting you to just talk to the people a little bit about your background so we can get to know you a little better.
Great. I'm just very excited to be here and share. Well, I am married, and I have been married 36 years now, and I have two kids, and I have just found out that we're going to have our first grandbaby coming in March, so very excited about that.
How fun.
And born in Oklahoma City, my dad was in the oil business, and I'm one of 4 siblings, and so we got to, being in the oil business, got to live in big places like Wichita, Kansas, and Amarillo, Texas, while Dad was working the rigs. Yes. But we ended in Tulsa, and that's where my mom and Dad both were raised. Mom and Dad had a huge love for the city of Tulsa, both graduating Central High School, 1953 Braves, and so they were very, very involved with their high school reunions and whatnot. Well, we lived in Tulsa. I loved Tulsa. But then it was 1972, and my mom and Dad were called by the Lord to start a Christian summer camp, Shepherd's Fold Ranch, which is just north of Tulsa. And so we moved to summer camp. And so I basically grew up at Shepherd's Fold. And it was during that time that my older brother, was going to Oral Roberts University. And funds at the home were pretty tight. And so I was watching how that was playing out. And I knew at that time I needed to go to work and not try to get any money from Mom and Dad, basically. So I went to work right after high school. My dad and I would drive back and forth into Tulsa, and both of us working different jobs. And it was my dad, when we'd be driving from the north into downtown, and Dad would say, "Oh, Kelly, just look at all those buildings." And he'd say, "Look at all those windows." He'd say, "Kelly, just pick your building. Each one of those windows are making money." So he put that excitement of Tulsa, and I wish I had paid more attention to him while he was living, as we were pounding those streets, walking up and down the streets, and all the stories that he had about each of those buildings. But it was later then that I found and developed that great love myself for Tulsa.
That's a phenomenal story. I didn't realize your parents were so instrumental in starting Shepherd's Fold.
They were the founders of Shepherd's Fold Ranch. They were the founders. And so back in the day, this was 1972. I was 12 years old at that time. So our family We were the lifeguards. We were the work down with the horses in the corral. We were the counselors. We were the worship leaders with the guitar, learning all of this. So it was a time of great learning. It was Mom and Dad's vision. My two brothers in the past have been the leadership of Shepherd's Fold Ranch, and my sister and I have spent time on the board of Shepherd's Fold. It's still going very strongly as well. And so anyway, but that's where some roots that I have.
So now I'm realizing maybe that's how you also learn to entertain people with stories, because kids, it's hard to capture their attention and keep them captivated.
Absolutely. My dad might have been the best storyteller that I have ever known.
Wow.
And you would just sit and listen to the stories. And it could be just about an event that happened during the day. But some people can spin it to where, oh my gosh, you mean that happened at the grocery store or whatever. But to make it so interesting that people want to hear more of that story or want to hear just more from you.
Okay, so I think you're pretty good, because I did leave that tour thinking that this was the best tour I've ever been on. It was incredible. Great. But one of the things that really caught my attention that you said at the beginning of the tour, you were talking about your life and a career that you were in, and you decided to get out of that career and start Tours of Tulsa. And so you had to take a leap. So I wanted you to kind of walk people through that a little bit about what you did before and then how you decided to start Tours of Tulsa.
Okay. So I have done several entrepreneurial things. I have worked at several corporate jobs as well. It was in 2006 that my kids were now at a point where I wasn't stay-at-home mom, basically, and I was needing to get back into the workforce. I had previously worked for law firms in downtown Tulsa and worked in the accounting area. That's what I did. And it was 2006. And I had an interview with a law firm downtown with some previous lawyers that I had worked with. And I happened to look in the newspaper, which I read every single day. And in the newspaper, this was back when the Tulsa World actually had a Midtown News portion. And that was just a community part of that paper. And I would read that word for word for word. In that 2006 paper, there was an article about Miss Alice Freshley, who had a tour company. It was called Bandana Tours of Tulsa. I read every word of this article, and I thought, what? Tulsa has something for tours? Had no idea that there was enough interest of anything here in Tulsa that we would have tours. But then she was talking about all these tunnels. And my corporate life has been in downtown Tulsa. I didn't know we had tunnels in downtown Tulsa. I called Miss Freshley on that day. I didn't know her from anyone. And I said, Miss Freshley, you have to hire me. You're not going to find anybody in this city that loves Tulsa like I love Tulsa. Well, it kind of took her back, and she was a little shaken. She said, oh, well, Kelly, I need for you to come on a tour. And I did. And I was taking notes as fast as I could take notes, knowing the whole time I was never going to be able to do a tour like Miss Freshley. Miss Freshley was a retired school teacher, not from Tulsa. So she had the authority in her voice for those children to calm down. She was able to do things. She could spend 15 minutes on a wall. And I kept thinking, I want to know more about who put that wall there. I want to know more about the backstory of that wall, not necessarily about that stone itself. But these were things that were going through my mind. That was my aha moment. Or maybe that's when we might say, that's when the Lord touched my passion for the city of Tulsa. Kelly, you're not supposed to do a tour just like someone else. Because for that tour to become your tour, you've got to come from your angle and what you love is going to show through from the way that you're talking to people and relating to people. So I've always had great respect for Miss Alice Freshley. So at the same time, I went and had my interview at the law firm. And I said, but here's the catch. I've just started doing some walking tours for Bandana Tours. And I said, so when she calls me, I want to be able to go do that tour. And they said, Kelly, we want you to be here at the law firm so you can clock in and out whenever you have a walking tour, as long as you give us the hours for the day that you're promising to give us. No problem. And so I might be at work and get a text, Kelly, I need for you to go meet here, meet here, meet here. No problem. And clock in and out and then go back and finish that job. So Miss Freshley had me doing walking tours, and she wanted me so much to do more, to step on the buses and do the step-on tours, to be able to go and do presentations different places. But I was still raising my kids. Mm-hmm. I had the job at the law firm. All I needed at that time was the walking tour. Miss Freshley, her health was in poor shape at this time. She also very quickly had to start raising, or chose to start raising, a grandchild that she had not counted on. And so, as the years were going, I had such great respect for Miss Freshley because she wasn't from Tulsa. She didn't have that foundation. So the amount of research that she put in to learning the stories of the city of Tulsa is really mind-boggling. Well, the day came when she said, Kelly, I need to sell the company. And she was on oxygen at that point. And I said, I'm ready, Miss Freshley. I'm ready to do this. And so what she did was changed on the website. She changed the phone number to my cell phone number. My phone started ringing. This is when Tulsa was starting its grand revival in 2006-ish. Probably 7 years later that's when I bought the company in 2013. So today we're at 10 years that I've had this company. So I got the company as Bandana Tours of Tulsa. Alice had gotten the company from Bandana Tours and Events. That was a whole different company back then. So when I bought the company, very quickly knew I wanted to change that name to be a little bit more accessible for people that were Googling anything with tours. So I just cut off the Bandana name and kept Tours of Tulsa. So this has been a long-grown company that I'm very honored to be at the helm today.
That's so neat. So we share a background in accounting.
Yes.
And neither of us are doing that anymore.
No.
So that's kind of funny. But
I do tell kids groups. We do a lot of walking field trips, especially third graders. Oklahoma history is in third grade typically in Tulsa. And I tell students all the time, it doesn't matter how old you are when you start working. Do your finest job every single day. Because you never know when you might own that company or be part of that company in a positive way, be known for that company. But every single job that you're doing to make money is a good job. Just know that. Just making money, finding whatever it is that you can do to make money, that's a great thing for you to be able to do. And every single job may not be your passion, but when you find that passion and that niche, what is so fantastic is to be able to do your passion and maybe make a little bit of money on the side. So just being able to find what that niche happens to be for you.
I love that. I love those words. So going from accounting to becoming an entrepreneur, really, is very different. And I feel like your personality lends itself to that, but you also have to be able to put yourself out there, to sell it and do a good job and that kind of thing. So if you could kind of talk to us about being an entrepreneur and what that has been like.
So being able to be in accounting.
Yeah.
I love structure. There's nothing more structured than
Do you
accounting.
keep your own books for this too?
Yes,
yes,
absolutely, and for the household and whatnot.
Yeah.
But in accounting, all of that background was so fantastic. When now I've got this company, it was 2 months after I bought the company that Miss Freshley died. Well, I never had the opportunity to talk to Miss Freshley about how she did any books. Did she keep any books? I don't know. As far as accounting records, she gifted me with many books of Tulsa. But as far as accounting and as far as how she booked things, this was well back before computers, even for Miss Freshley. And so those were things that I had to learn on my own, and how I was going to start keeping those records to be able to have a month to month and know if I'm growing or know if we're doing any good. Those were things that I had to really dig into and learn.
It is such a good background. I tell people it's such a solid background to have, because then if you go into business for yourself, you're able to look and see and track things. You're the one who's able to do that. And I think that's very helpful.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And when you own your own business, then you do everything. And so, everything from training the tour guides, and that's a big thing.
Okay, Kelly, you do a good job duplicating yourself in finding tour guides who are also passionate about giving these tours for Tours of Tulsa. So how do you train them?
Letting them know that we're going to do quite a bit of touring, and then it's up to them to start researching even more than what I'm giving them. Anyone can Google a building or a stone, and you're going to get your information. But it's when you can start making that information come to life, and the people that have actually come before, and what sacrifices did those people as individuals and as families have to make for this building to stand here.
We'll talk about fascinating stories. So what comes to mind, people, that adage, if walls could talk, if these walls could talk, you truly make the walls talk, because everything comes to life in these tours. And so I just would like to hear from you about your favorite place, your favorite building, what you have that you really enjoy in Tulsa.
Well, let's start at the premise that every single building has a story. Every symbol in and on a building, in and on a church, has a meaning. It wasn't just extra stuff that they threw up on a building. There was a meaning for everything to be like it stands today. So I have been asked over the years, what's your favorite building? They all have such rich stories. I will tell you, I love touring Boston Avenue United Methodist Church. And one of the main reasons, and many people may or may not know this, but the designer of this church, this was back when the church actually stood at 5th and Boston. It was a 3-story church building that they had outgrown. And one thing Methodists can do pretty well is put together a committee. And so they were looking for an artist within the country that might study Methodist symbols. And if they would, what might an Art Deco church building look like? They sent the plea nationwide. And where they found that artist, roughly 1925, was right here in Tulsa. And it was a woman. Her name was Ada Robinson. And the best part of her story for me, she was a Central High School art teacher who had taken years out of her life to study Methodist symbols. Everything in and on that church building has something to do with the Methodist faith. So I love finding those stories out. For many years, Miss Robinson did not get credit for this church because she was a woman. The man that got the credit was Mr. Bruce Goff, who is a wonderful Art Deco architect, has done many homes and buildings here in the city of Tulsa. But the story is, Bruce Goff was Ada Robinson's student. She was the teacher. So the church recognizes Miss Ada Robinson. So we recognize in a big way Miss Ada Robinson. So just outside of denomination and outside of belief and feeling for certain faiths, the buildings, oh my goodness, to tell the story about the buildings and some of those churches that were almost to declare bankruptcy, but families selling their rings and their necklaces and their fine goods at their home to be able to bring their tithe to those churches for those buildings to be built. Those things ring a bell with me.
I love Tulsa's architecture, Art Deco, and the churches that we have. So Kelly, do you have a story that you like to share?
I love telling about Mr. Waite Phillips. Waite Phillips' older brother Frank Phillips started Phillips Petroleum, evolving into Phillips 66. But Waite Phillips was one of 10 kids in that family, and Frank was the oldest. Waite Phillips had an identical twin brother named Wyatt. Well, Waite was W-A-I and Wyatt was W-I-A. And in Tulsa, we hear some about Waite, but we hear nothing about Wyatt because Wyatt died at the age of 19. Can you imagine losing your twin brother at the age of 19? Waite Phillips was devastated. He told himself then that any building or home that he might build, he was going to put the WP initial wherever he could put it. And so on these walking tours that we do, you're going to see several places where the WPs show up. Some people think the WP shows up because Waite Phillips might have been fairly confident, and he had every reason to be. But other people say, I bet the WP shows up out of response and love for Mr. Wyatt Phillips, his brother. So there's so many grand stories. Mr. Waite Phillips met and married Miss Beautiful Genevieve. And they built a house right in Midtown, and we call their home today Phil Brook Museum of Art. And they didn't live in that house all that long when he woke up and he said, Genevieve, this place feels like a museum. He said, let's give this land and this home to Tulsa. That's when he built his skyscraper downtown for their penthouse suite to be up on the top floor. So talking about so many things of Waite Phillips, and in his Phil Tower building, which is the most Gothic, beautiful lobby. And the Phil Tower building was built in 1928, and the top floor of the Phil Tower, that was KVOO radio for a number of years. Wow. And one of our finest radio storytellers of all time started his first job at KVOO at the young age of 13 years old. The man I'm telling you about is Mr. Paul Harvey. And Paul Harvey would end those stories, and that is the rest of the story. Now, the reason Paul Harvey had to start working at 13, Paul Harvey's dad was a Tulsa police officer who had been gunned down by the outlaws. It was now time for Paul to start helping support his mother and his sister, age 13. So many stories of Waite Phillips that we love telling. And that's what's so fun about the city of Tulsa, because we have some beautiful stories. We have so many interesting stories. We have some very hard, horribly uncomfortable stories. But guess what? It's all of those stories that encompass what we need to know for the legacy of who we are here in Tulsa. Each one of us, it should be our responsibility wherever we might live. Know the history of where you live, wherever that might be. Know the history of the building. Even if it's a new building, know who put that there. Where did the money come from to put that there? How long have they been working to get that building sitting right where that stands? Because there's so many stories with all of those buildings.
It is so interesting, that rich history that we have in Tulsa.
There are. And Nancy, I wanted to mention one thing when you said something about the walls talking.
Yeah.
I want to share with you, this has been several years back when Dr. Turner was the senior pastor at Vernon AME on Greenwood Avenue. Vernon AME stands for African Methodist Episcopal. There's a lot going on in that title, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Turner was there for a time. And I called him and I said, Dr. Turner, I want you to take me through your church. I want to hear your story of your church, of your building, of your people, and how this church all came about. we went to that church that day, and he said, I'm going to take you all down to the basement. The basement is where, during our 1921 race massacre, many were hiding in that basement. And he said, just put your hands on these walls. Do you feel what the walls are saying? It was quite amazing because you did. You felt the fear. You know, people, shh, be quiet. We can't let them hear us down in here. All of those stories were down in that basement. At the time of the race massacre, the individuals that were burning down that Greenwood area, they didn't know there was a basement in that church. So when the church started burning, they thought that was it. And so in the basement, so many people were packed in. So that was a real live experience of, can you feel the walls and what they're saying to you?
See, that's one thing I admire about you, is that you reach out to people and you are so interested, genuinely interested in hearing first person, if you can, from them and their experiences.
That is quality right there. Getting meetings with people, because every one of us, if there's a story, if there's a building, if there's a church, we have our own perception. And it may be right, it may be really wrong. We don't know, but it's our perception. And so to hear it coming from another viewpoint, wow. And to be open to that viewpoint. I'm not saying our perception is right, our perception is wrong, but being open to the other viewpoints. I remember being at a lecture one day with Hannibal Johnson, who has written many, many books about our Greenwood district, the Black Wall Street area. And one of the things that Hannibal always said at the end of his lectures, he would just say, the best thing that we can all do is communicate and keep our communication lines open. Because it's when we stop communicating that we start building in our own minds, even if we're subconscious of doing this, but we are building forces against those that we are not visiting with. Just open the line of communication. Be open to what other people have to say. But through the years, it's been my joy to have appointments with 90-year-old plus people that are longtime Tulsans.
See, I just admire that. You going and seeking out this information, and then here you're sharing it with us now.
Absolutely. So, because those stories need to be told.
Yeah.
Those stories, as long as we're not hurting people, but the stories, many times you hear stories, and it's those stories that are going to bolster what you're doing forward.
Okay, so speaking of bolstering what you're doing forward, so I feel like this business is just made for you, or you have grown it into what it is.
Once the aha moment, once I felt, I'm going to use the word anointing, fall on me, because I really felt that in a big way. I felt how I could get so behind the city of Tulsa, get so behind the people that built this city and continue to build this city forward. So it's that is something that is so rich to me, and to be able to have that passion and take that passion, instill that passion into the tour guides that I have trained as we go forward. They know the expectation. I don't go on their tours and I don't hold a thumb to them because I trust them. I trust their words and what they're saying.
Well, we talked about this too, but you hire the right people. You know what to ask, so you hire the right people.
A guide, when they're wanting to be a guide for Tours of Tulsa, need to be able to answer one question. Why do you love Tulsa, Oklahoma? And in that writing, I want to be able to feel the depth of the love for the city of Tulsa. This is not about a job This is not about making a whole lot of money or anything like that, but it is about the love of the city of Tulsa and being able to share those stories forward and not erase stories that have been there. That's all part of our history. Those are stories we continue to tell. In each area of the city, there are backstories that need to be told, and that makes sense as far as how come things look the way that they look today. So I feel a very huge responsibility to tell those stories to the best of my ability after the research that we have done.
Yeah, yes, incredible. Okay, so if you'll tell us a little bit more about Tours of Tulsa and the tours that you do so people have an idea of what you offer.
So each of our tours are private, so it doesn't matter if it's one person. It doesn't matter if it is a great big charter bus of 50 people. We can definitely tour all of those. We do many walking, historical, Art Deco tunnel tours. And an individual that is booking that tour, they can choose an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours for that tour. We do it every day for an hour, but a lot of times after that hour, people say, gosh, I wish we had longer. I wish we could go in more buildings.
Yes.
And so that's why we offer that extra time. If we have extra time, we might be able to go to a balcony. If we have extra time, we may go to 1 or 2 more buildings, maybe get into another public tunnel. So it's just about the time, but the time that we spend with you will be rich and full. We charge $80 an hour, not per person. $80 for a walking tour is good for 1 to 10 people. You name the day, you give us the best time, and we will get you into that time frame and let you know then where we will meet. The tunnels, the buildings, and the lobbies are all open Monday through Friday. We can tour from 9 until 4:30. So anytime during the week we can do that. Now we do step-on tours. We step on buses. We team many times with Old Urban Trolley. A group will rent the trolley and say we want a historical trolley tour. And we step on that trolley, whether it's at a hotel, possibly at one of the churches, at a parking lot. But we can step on those trolleys or buses, then we will customize an itinerary based on the length of time that we have to tour. We can get off and we can go in those buildings, see a tunnel, possibly tour a church, get back on a trolley or a bus. Many times groups say, nope, we want to stay on our bus the whole time. We don't want to get off. Fine. We can customize that tour for that as well. Now, if it's a very, very small, maybe 1 to 5 people, we can come and pick you up at your hotel or at your home if you have your son and daughter-in-law in, and we can customize your tour based on the length of time you'd like to tour. Many times people say, well, we want you to stay with us through lunchtime and then continue on after lunchtime. If that's the case, we can do that as well. We do many corporate team building tours, letting these interns know about the city of Tulsa is only going to make them richer for your company because they know the history of where they are working in downtown Tulsa or the history of our city of Tulsa. We do many kids field trips, whether it's through private schools. Many times 3rd grade is Oklahoma history, and that's when bring those kids down to us, and we want to get them excited about looking for gold, finding those clocks. What do you all see in these symbols? Do you all see the gargoyles? Do you know what a gargoyle is put on a building to represent? All of these different things. And knowing that when we're pointing out stained glass windows all tell a story. This is back in the day when not everyone spoke English. You were supposed to be able to walk into a church and read their stained glass windows so you would know what that congregation believes. So that's where all of that comes from. We do many class reunions, people coming back to Tulsa that maybe left Tulsa years ago, haven't been back, And when we get them on a trolley or a walking tour and to start seeing their eyes start lighting up, it's fascinating. We go out and do many presentations, whether it's at Rotary clubs, sometimes school, pep assemblies, different things like this. Many assisted living places. We will go and do presentations about 2 cities within 1 city. Both sides of our railroad tracks were thriving at the turn of the century and through the 1920s. What made each side of those railroad tracks so very, very different? That is our presentation speech that we give when we go out and speak to get people interested in this great city of Tulsa.
It's nice that you're a small enough company that you can customize for people and exactly
Absolutely.
what they want. So you really cater to the people that
That's right. We have a website, toursoftulsa.com, and then many people are going through that website, and we don't book through the website, although it sends it to my email address, and that way we can learn more about you before we book you. That has always been very important for me as the company owner, to really understand what it is that this group or this couple coming into Tulsa, what is your greatest interest? Have you never been to Tulsa before and you have no idea? Or are you most interested in the Art Deco? Or what is it that is bringing you to the city of Tulsa? That's what we want to focus on when we're building that. So I can be emailed at kelly.gibson@toursoftulsa.com or through the website toursoftulsa.com.
Okay, perfect. Okay, one more question and wrapping up. So my theme is living purposefully in 2023, and I'm just wondering if you could share with people how you have found your purpose or how you're living purposefully in 2023.
The only way that I see that you live with a purpose is through the Lord. And you have to have hope through the Lord and through Jesus Christ. That purpose then takes you every single day, wanting you to wake up and get out of bed and see, who are you going to get to talk to today? What are you going to be able to see that might be new and different for today? That passion that I feel. I think that one thing I wanted to mention in doing the job that I do and that I get to do every single day, I know that this is a passion because I would do this every day for free. I want people to know about the city of Tulsa and the stories.
Okay, I love that. This has been such a joy to visit with you and get to hear some fun stories. You really made it come to life. Now I've got to get videos set up. I just do, because seeing you and hearing from you, it's just been a treat. So anyway,
Nancy,
thank you
so much for your time, and thank you for your interest. And there's nothing I would rather do than tell stories about Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. It means the world to me, and I'd love to connect with you. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter at Passion Sharing. Also, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. And as always, all my show notes will be available on my website, sharingpassionandpurpose.com.